welcome back to another educational video on hypertrophy. So, the main topic today is why you don't need to train to failure for muscle hypertrophy. So, just a quick overview of what we're going to talk about in the oncoming slides. We have what causes muscle to grow, what training to failure looks like, the problem with training to failure, the fix, misconceptions, and a thank you page. So, let's begin. What is the main factor for muscle hypertrophy? It is mechanical tension, and that's undoubtedly the driver of hypertrophy. Loads of studies, let's not go into that. So, how do we increase mechanical tension? So, let's have a look. Slowing of bar speed involuntarily. So this means you are pushing with your force, you are pushing with a high amount of force, and the bar slows down without you controlling the bar slowing down. So this could be if you were curling, doesn't have to be a bar, it's anything, the weight you're lifting, the resistance, you're curling the weight, and it's slowing down even though you're pushing as hard as you can. That is what that means. Heavy loads. Now, why does this increase mechanical tension? Well, it instantly recruits the high threshold motor units. Now, what the hell is a motor unit? This little diagram down here, it's a little explainer. It's Heisman's size principle. So, you have motor units, and they are all responsible for recruiting different types of muscle fibers. So we have low energy requiring exercises. Let's say you're just warming up with a 5 kg dumbbell. That doesn't take a lot of energy, which doesn't take a lot of motor units, because it doesn't take a lot of muscle to move that weight. So it's low. However, heavy loads allows you to instantly recruit high threshold motor units because it's heavy. Why do heavy loads? Yeah, so heavy loads instantly recruit high threshold motor units. Motor units control all of your muscle, essentially. And you want to recruit the largest muscle fibers, which is Heisman's size principle here. You recruit the largest muscle fibers which have the most potential for hypertrophy. That is why you use heavy loads. And training close to failure. Training close to failure increased high perception of effort, which again goes to motor units. More motor units, more muscles involved, more hypertrophy. More hypertrophy. So pretty much push heavy weight and close to failure. What is training to failure? Task failure. It means you are unable to complete the last rep within your set with this criteria. And the criteria is the same standardized form and the same range of motion. So if you are unable to do that, then that means you've trained failure for that set. That's all that training to failure means. So what's the problem with training to failure? It can cause excessive fatigue. Fatigue demon can't just have subsequent sets. So all this means for fatigue, it's generally based for the session that you're working in. So you train to failure for all of your sets, let's say. Whether you like it or not, you're going to accumulate fatigue, and that fatigue is not going to allow you to access those high motor units for the later sets. And we know from what we've just talked about that we want to recruit as high and as many motor units as we can for our sets to get the best hypertrophic stimulus. So if we are fatigued going into those sets, we won't be able to. And leading on to point 2, the diminishing returns for the session is... So I'm not saying that training to failure is bad for hypertrophy. For that set, it's great. That last rep is going to be great for hypertrophy. But what about all your other sets? That's the big question. You want to be effective with your programming, you want to be effective with your training. So keep it in mind. And also another downside of training to failure is greater injury risk. Because from what I've seen anyways in my experience, when people train to failure, especially me, the form breaks down incredibly quickly, and injured means no training. Alright, let's go on to the fix. So, to begin with, let's start with reps in reserve, which is the middle one. So, you can train to failure or you can train with reps in reserve. Now, what reps in reserves mean is you stop the set before you go to failure, or you stop the set 1 rep shy of failure, etc. So, why do we want to do this? Because for failure training, the last grinding rep accumulates lots of fatigue, and for the stimulus, it's not worth it. So when we do train with reps in reserve, we want to train 0 to 1 RAR. So we're still training close to failure. We're still training with a close proximity to failure. However, if you are a beginner, I would recommend training to failure, seeing what training to failure feels like, and then trying reps in reserve after a couple months of that. That's the fix. And with reps in reserve, we also want to train heavy load within a 4 to 8 rep range. Now, a heavy load allows you to access those high threshold motor units from the first rep because you are already having a high perceived effort just from the first rep, which is why we train heavy, low reps. And 4 to 8 reps, just in general, will create less fatigue due to higher rep range, calcium ion, blah, blah, blah. And apart from that, we have reps in reserve, heavy load, 2 or less sets. For me, I do upper lower, so two sets or 1 set per exercise is great. If you're doing any more than that, again, fatigue, you can't push as hard for later sets. It's one of those things where you just have to experiment a bit. Just experiment. Okay. What are misconceptions about this? Well, train to failure, bro. Mike Mensa did it, and you're way smaller. Well, let's just explain with our brain for a little second. As we've just mentioned previously, driver of hypertrophy, mechanical tension. Mechanical tension, we want high motor units, high motor unit recruitment, and to have high motor unit recruitment, we have slowing down involuntary bar path and all the other stuff I said. So training to failure is the exact same compared to all of the other reps when training with heavy loads and low reps. There is nothing special about the failure rep. You might feel like you're training hard because you are, but you're also accumulating a lot of fatigue, which you don't want. And another good point for this is do not compare yourself against genetically elite enhanced bodybuilders. You know, people say, well, Ronnie Coleman did this, Arnold did this. They're all on steroids and they had great genetics from the start. So using anecdotes doesn't help us actually explain what's going on underneath it all. So we don't talk about them. Next misconception. Training with reps is... Next misconception. Training with reps in reserve is easy. No, it's not. Thank you for watching. That is the end of the video. If you have any questions, drop them down below. I'll answer them all. And I hope you learned something from watching about why you don't need to train to failure. You can, you just don't need to.